So what if? It's probably a question that I bet most of us in this room have probably asked ourselves in many different ways, probably at many different times. Like, what if I were a nurse instead of a teacher? Or what if I would have gone a different way to work today? Would I still have gotten in that little fender bender? Or what if I lived in Florida in January? Or as one of my students asked just yesterday, what if Martin Luther King Jr. would have never been shot? Or what if I had had the opportunity to have the HPV vaccine? Now, when we ask these what-if questions, we could fill them with positive or negative thoughts. We could fill them with serious or silly thoughts, and we can ask these questions often to ourselves or hardly ever at all. But I think whenever we do ask them, it makes us think, and they probably even make us realize that any decision that we make, any opportunity that we have, or any situation that we're in can change the course and the path that we lead in our lives. So my story begins about 4.5 years ago. I was 31 years old. I had a 2-year-old daughter. I had a husband, and I was a teacher. And I was also just starting a brand new school year. And I also found out that I was pregnant with my second child. In September of '07, I went in for my, you're 6 weeks pregnant visit with my OB, and as is pretty much routine, I had a PAP at that point in time, and that PAP came back abnormal. It was my first abnormal PAP ever, and I had been getting PAPs regularly, routinely, since I was 18. This PAP, and 9 months prior, I had had a clean PAP, a clear PAP, and everything was fine. So this PAP came back with the results of ascus, which basically, I guess, what I'm told by my doctor means atypical. And it also showed positive for HPV. It didn't say, and my paperwork, and I think a special test is done to determine what kind of HPV, but my results, or my folders and stuff in my doctor's office don't say which kind. It just came back basically positive for high-risk HPV, which includes quite a few of those different strands and different kinds. So just a few weeks later, in October of '07, I had a colposcopy, which came back with a description of atypia, which I guess means not that bad. And because of that, and because I was just newly pregnant, we didn't do a biopsy. In February of '08, when I was still pregnant, I had another PAP just to kind of follow up, and the results were the same. It was an ascus PAP, positive for high-risk HPV, nothing worse than it had been just a few months before, so that was good. And I hate to admit it, but at this time in my life, I knew pretty much nothing about HPV. I had heard about it. I had heard about HPV. I knew that it stood for the human papillomavirus, and I knew that it had some kind of connection to cervical cancer. And the only reason I knew that was because of the vaccine commercials that I had seen on TV. So I was an educated, professional, healthy young woman, and I knew next to nothing about this virus that would drastically change my life in just the few coming months. So what if I would have known about HPV? What if I would have been a little bit more educated about this virus that was about to rock my world? What if I had been educated or known more? Would I have not asked my doctor the what seems like now incredibly naive question of how the heck did these HPV cells get in me in the first place? I asked that question, and when the doctor told me that it was sexually transmitted, then I asked myself, okay, well, what if you have my labs messed up or with some other woman's labs? And because there's no way that I have a sexually transmitted infection. And perhaps this is too much information, but I feel that it's necessary for the purpose of why we're here tonight. But my sexual history and that of my husband was pretty much as innocent as it gets. I'm assuming that some women, when they might hear that HPV, they might ask themselves, well, what if I wouldn't have had sex with this guy or that guy? Would I still be in this situation? But I couldn't even ask that question. We would have bet a lot of money that, that I would have never had anything associated with sexually transmitted anything. So my doctor reassured me that about 70%-ish of women have or get HPV, and she reassured me that it doesn't mean cancer. We asked the question, what if my body gets rid of these cells kind of naturally through my eventual labor, which I guess can happen. And if it didn't, she reassured me that there were ways that we could get rid of these cells. So with that reassurance, I went on with my pregnancy, and I really didn't worry about things. And in April of '08, our son, Sammy, was born. And with all that comes with a new baby, there was absolutely no concern about HPV or even cervical cancer. It wasn't even on our radar. In June of '08, I had my postpartum exam with my OB, which is routine, and that PAP came back HGSIL, for all you doctors out there or medical people. Apparently that means high-grade squamous intraepithelial lesion. It was a little bit more serious to my understanding than my previous PAPs, but it wasn't cancer. It basically just meant that these cells were not going to go away on their own. So I had another colposcopy, and same results. So the next step was to have a LEEP procedure, and I had heard nothing about a LEEP procedure before in my life, but I was surprised that when I asked around, lots of women had either had a LEEP procedure before, or they had heard or they knew of people that had had a LEEP procedure before. I even remember talking to a friend who had had 2 LEEP procedures before because the cells kept coming back. And all of these women were fine, so I was hoping that I could join their club. So in the very early of August '08, I had my LEEP procedure. And about a week later, on August 7th, 2008, one day before the Summer Olympics started that year, 2 days before we were having a huge party at our house that weekend, 4 days before I was about to start a brand new school year, while my 3-year-old daughter and my 3-month-old son were napping upstairs, my doctor called. And she was calling to tell me the results of my LEEP. And the results, she said, showed cervical squamous cell carcinoma with tumors that were extensively in the surgical margins. Basically, I had cervical cancer. And they would later stage it to be stage 3B cervical cancer. So what if I wasn't a 32-year-old young mother just diagnosed with cancer? Wouldn't that be awesome? On the phone during this conversation, I remember how surprised my doctor was. She said things, like LEEPs never come back like this. And you just had a clean PAP a year and a half ago, and you have absolutely none of the risk factors for HPV or for cervical cancer. And perhaps the one thing that she said that sticks with me a lot to this day, and she says it every time I see her, she said, if this can happen to you, it can happen to pretty much anybody. So after that phone call for about 2 days, extreme fear entered my world, and questions like, what if it has already spread to other parts of my body? What if I die? What if my kids grow up without me being their mom? And even worse, what if they don't remember me? But we rallied. We educated ourselves, my husband and I. We talked to doctors. We talked to friends. We let our situation be known to pretty much everybody we knew. And in that, we heard a lot of success stories, and we heard a lot of hope. And we began to think, what if we can beat this? And what if everything is going to be okay? With the guidance of my oncologist and with the outlook of being as aggressive as we could with this whole situation, my treatment was to have a hysterectomy. And about 3 weeks after my diagnosis, I had my hysterectomy. And as routine with this kind of a hysterectomy, the doctors took out about 20 lymph nodes from my abdominal area. And during the procedure, during my hysterectomy, one of those lymph nodes felt funny to my doctor, and he pretty much thought that the cancer had spread to that lymph node, and the pathology reports that we got about a week later showed that that was true. So the cancer had spread to one of the 20 lymph nodes and was in my lymph system. Now, for those of you who want to know, I'm sure there's some of you in here that don't want to know this, but because of the funny feeling lymph node, they did take my ovaries. So what if I would not have to experience menopause at the ripe old age of 32? Hence the reason for no sleeves in January. So because of the funny lymph node, my treatment now went on to include 6 weeks of daily radiation, 6 weeks of weekly chemotherapy, and ended up with 3 weeks, of weekly internal radiation. We got through it just fine. It was tough. It was crazy. It was hard. But we got through it, and my treatments ended about 3 years ago. Just a little over 3 years ago is when I finished up my treatments. And we're all doing well right now. I'm doing well. My kids are 6 and 3. I'm still teaching, and life is good. Life is good. It's ironic to think, when I do really think about it, it's ironic for me to think about how something that once equaled incredible fear, and it equaled naiveness, and it equaled death, has now equaled strength and power and knowledge and advocacy. And the what ifs are still there. What if I wouldn't have had cancer? Would we have had more kids like we were planning on? Would I be the same person that I am today? Would I be as strong as I think I am today? Would I have to live with this fear, little fear, that the cancer is going to come back? And would I be in the position that I am right now to advocate for women's health and for vaccines? Who knows? Obviously, when we ask these what-if questions, the answers aren't there. And perhaps these what-if questions are silly or pointless or even dangerous to the mind. But sometimes I think that these what-if questions can help us think a little bit deeper, or maybe they provide a little bit more clarity for us about decisions that we have to make. And I think that these what-if questions can even give us the power to take action for women who aren't as fortunate as probably most of us are to have the healthcare opportunities that we do have. I think they might give us the power to take action for ourselves and for our daughters and our sons. And with respect for why we're here this evening, what if these what-if questions can give us the power to take action that results in change? Thank you.